Welcome back. Today will be part 2 on factorizing number factors from algebraic expressions. We're going to be focusing on 2 examples that deal with negative common factors. So in part 1, what you looked at was the highest common factor being a positive number. Okay, so for example, this 2 and this 5. In today's video, it's going to be dealing with negative common factors. So same thing kind of applies to your positive, it's just we're dealing with negatives, that's it. First things first, before we start, I need you to have the understanding of your negatives and positives. So if you go back to year 7, you've learned that if you had a positive number and a positive number, in the end, my answer is going to be a positive. If you get given a negative number and a positive number, you get given your answer as a negative. If you get a negative number and a negative number, you get a positive answer. The gist is if the signs are the same, kind of like these two, okay, you get given the exact same sign, it leads me to a positive number. Now, if the signs are different, just like this middle one here, whichever way, it could be plus and then minus or minus and then plus. As long as the signs are different, then my answer is a negative. Okay, so keep that in mind because we'll need it for today. Okay, first things first, to deal with negative 3x minus 18p. First things first that I'm going to do is find the HCF, highest common factor. So I'm just going to deal with the numbers 3 and 18. Okay, now what are two numbers multiplied together to get me 3, or 1 and 3? What two numbers multiplied together gets me 18? Well, there's the easy one, 1 and 18. It's an even number, so it could be divided by 2, so 2 and 9. And I see 18 in my 3 times tables, so 3 and 6. Now, I'm going to circle which numbers do they have, which factors do they have in common. I've got the factor number 1 and factor number 2, number 3, sorry. Now, my HCF is going to be the highest number that I've circled, which is 3. Now, with my highest common factor, as like question number A and B, I put my highest common factor in the front and I put a bracket, an open bracket. Now, before we continue, because we're dealing with a negative, okay, at the front here, what we're going to do is we're going to also put the negative at the front. So now it's not just positive 3, but now it's going to be negative 3. The reason being is because I don't want to make my life complicated with the stuff that's left over inside. Okay? Or in basic terms, I don't want my x to be negative. I want it to always be positive. Okay? So in this case, negative 3 times what gives me negative 3x? Well, I took out the negative, so that gives me left over as an x. So negative 3 times x gives me negative 3x. This is where it gets a little bit hard. Let's just first deal with the numbers. Okay, so 3 times what gives me 18p. At the moment, 3 times 6p gives me 18p. Now, what I need to do is I need to put either a plus or a minus in between x and 6p. How do I figure that out? Well, think about it. I have a negative number here, negative 3p, negative 3, and I need to multiply it by 6p to get me a negative number. So a negative number, negative 3, times 6p gives me a negative 18p. So what should I put in there? Well, if my answer is going to be a negative 18p, right, then and I already have a negative number that I'm multiplying it by, the negative 3. So inside must be a positive, because if I multiply a negative number and a positive number, it gives me a negative answer. Okay, take your time on these questions because it does get a bit tricky. Let's do the next question. Let's move this down. All right, next question. Negative 2 plus 12h. All right, same thing. Deal with the numbers first, so the 2 and the 12, to find the highest common factor. All right, two numbers multiplied together gets me 2. That's 1 and 2. Two numbers multiplied together gets me 12. So 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Okay, now circle the factors that they have in common. 2 and 2, 1 and 1. My highest common factor here is going to be 2. So I'm going to put 2 at the front and open the bracket. Because I'm dealing with a negative number at the front, I'm going to put a negative also at the front. Okay. Now, think about it this way. Just deal with the numbers. 2 times what gives me, negative 2 times what gives me negative 2. Well, negative 2 times 1 gives me negative 2. Then the next part, deal with the numbers only. 2 times what gives me 12. 2 times what gives me 12? Well, that's 6h, because h is left over. All right, 2 times 6h gives me 12h. Now let's deal with the negatives. Okay, I've got a negative number multiplied by something, 6h, could be positive, it could be negative, and my answer turns into a positive. Well, I'm multiplying a negative by something and my answer is positive. So of course, the 6h needs to be a negative. Okay. Please take your time on this. See how you go. Hopefully that makes sense, and see you next time. Bye.